Good morning. My name is Chris Fenton, and I am the technical trainer for Melco. For today's episode of the Melco Facebook Lives, what we are going to cover is bird's nest. How they can happen and how the correctly to take care of the bird's nest. So basically what bird's nest is we're getting no bobbin and all upper thread into the system. That thread will knot up underneath the garment in the needle plate hole and can actually wrap around the rotary hook as well. So if we don't remove that bird's nest correctly, we can cause some potential damage to the embroidery machine. In addition to that, you can mess up your garment as well, because if you just pull it off of the machine without clearing the bird's nest, you can distort the cap or also the flat garment that you're sewing on. So to start with, the first thing I wanted to discuss is what can cause a bird's nest. I've got two real common ones, and I've been doing this for 20 plus years and I still do them to this day. So say like needle 3 here, if I'm going to change out this cone of thread, I will lift my pinch roller up and I will pull my thread down through the system. I believe Nate did thread path stuff and things like that last week. I will forget to put this pinch roller back down again. That will create a bird's nest. Also, where the thread comes out under the pinch roller, if that thread is not centered directly under the pinch roller, when you close the pinch roller, the thread is not trapped. So a way that you can test that is when the pinch roller's down and I'm on needle number 3, I can do it to any of them. As you can see, I cannot pull the thread through the system. But if I have this thread not centered under the pinch roller and I put the pinch roller down, you can see that, it made a liar out of me, that I can still pull the thread out through the system even though the pinch roller is down. So that will cause you to get a bird's nest. Another one that I'm pretty notorious for is I will forget to put the bobbin case back in if I'm looking at something underneath the needle plate. Of course, that's going to cause a bird's nest because we don't have the bobbin in there for anything to tie off to. Another issue that could cause a bird's nest is if we remove our cap that we have on here, and we're going to talk about caps here in a second. You have this item right here, this guy that is called the rotary hook retaining finger. We have done numerous Facebook Lives that have incorporated this rotary hook retaining finger. What it does, it serves two purposes. On a rotary hook, you have an inner and an outer portion of the hook. The outer portion spins counterclockwise during a sewing cycle. The inner basket stays stationary. So that retaining finger, you can see that when I rattle the inner basket, the retaining finger is holding it in the correct position. If you remove this retaining finger, it actually has a setting. This gauge right here sets the distance of the retaining finger. Again, we have covered this in a couple other Facebook Lives, so you could go back and reference that. Also, if you go to the technical manual, it has an instruction in there on how to use this gauge. But if we push this retaining finger all the way back against the rotary hook to where it bottoms out, the bobbin actually flows through that area. So we would be restricting the flow of bobbin to the machine. That could be a source of a bird's nest as well. Another source of a bird's nest could be a hook timing issue. That's probably the very, very last thing that I'm going to look at for a bird's nesting problem. For hook timing to be off, we've had to add a lot of other things that go wrong with the machine to contribute to hook timing. So usually it's a pinch roller issue, or you forgot to put the bobbin in. Could be a thread feed issue as well for the thread feed wheel that is under the pinch roller. That is all part of a maintenance that should take care of it. Another one that can cause a bird's nest for you is that when it is sewing, the thread can slide out to the right side of the pinch roller. That's an indication that that pinch roller is under lubricated. What's happening is as the thread feed is feeding out, the pinch roller stalls and it'll allow the thread to slide out from the pinch roller. If you do see that, you could probably see it on needle positions that you use more than others. All you would like to do is lubricate the pinch roller, and it should take care of that problem for the bird's nest. So when you have a bird's nest, as we were talking about before, we're going to start out with a cap because I have a cap on the machine. The worst thing that you can do is just grab this cap, pop the 3, and just yank it off of the machine. Reason being that we discussed a little bit earlier is that thread gets wrapped around all kinds of different areas. It's not only just above the needle plate, it could have gone down through the needle plate hole and is now on the bottom side of the needle plate, and then it could also be all wrapped around the rotary hook. So if you just yank it off, you could be introducing potential damage to the machine. And as you can see, as a perfect example, here's the bobbin case. I did not put it back in the machine. So if I'm doing a cap and I'm doing either like what's called the snapback, or you have the Velcro, or the ones that aren't fitted, I actually can get my hand up through here and I can get to in between the needle plate and the cap in order to clear the bird's nest. Now, if I'm doing that, I'm probably using this type of a razor blade. It's just the standard razor blades that go in like the scrapers and stuff. I can come up with this razor blade and I can get in between the cap and the needle plate, and I can just use the needle plate to cut the threads. Whenever I'm sewing a hat, and Nate and Scott, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I try to avoid taking the cap out of the cap frame driver if I'm in the middle of sewing as much as I can.
Yeah, if I can not, let me try that again. If I can avoid unhooping whatever I'm doing, be it flat, be it cap, be it whatever, I'm going to try to leave it in the hoop. That way I can line it up and go again.
Yeah, that me as well. But some instances you can't. And where that instance is really going to kick in is if you're on a fitted hat. You don't have a lot of area or room to be able to get in to do anything on a fitted hat. So
sometimes with the flexible ones that aren't quite as fitted, you can stretch them a little, but yeah, the ones that are totally sized, yeesh.
So what I'm going to have to do is take my cap and I'm going to release my 3 clips. But when I take this hoop off, I am going very, very slowly. And then I am going to try to come in. Once I get some area on the back side, I'm going to come in again with either one of these razor blades, scissors if you've got them, or snips. Anything that you can use that's going to allow you to come into here and get that thread cut on the top side of the needle plate and the bottom side of the garment or the hat. So once I've got that cut, I'm going to go ahead and take my cap off. And I'm going to do a very thorough inspection of this area of the machine. And I am going to look into this area right here, and I'm going to make sure that I don't see a bunch of thread that's going down through the needle plate hole and intertwining with the hook. If it is, again, I'm going to take some sort of an instrument that's going to allow me to come in like this, make the cut to separate that thread again. Madeira offers a kit that is specifically designed for clearing bird's nest. What it has in here that I think is really cool is not only do you have some tweezers, but you have got this hook. So maybe even with this hook, you are able to get in here like this, and you are able to clear that thread out of the system. What you've really got to be careful for, though, is you got to remember is you're dealing with the rotary hook down here. And any kind of scratch, burr, nick, or anything like that that's introduced to the rotary hook, you're going to be introducing a thread break potential. So you've got to be really, really careful when you're working down in that area. So now I have got my thread cleared off of my garment to the needle plate, which is here. I've also cleared my thread between the needle plate to the rotary hook. So my next step that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to go ahead and just remove my needle plate. And I'm going to make sure that I have got everything cleaned out of that hook area altogether. So it's very important that I get that thread cut on the bottom side of the needle plate to the rotary hook, because if I take this needle plate off and that thread is still tied in and I just yank it off, I again have introduced a potential in this area for the thread to be wrapped around items that I could disform or mess up. So while we're talking about that, I want to show you on a S95 rotary hook. So the S95 rotary hook is on the EMT16, the EMT16 Plus, and the Melco Bravo. What the S95 rotary hook has is the thread cutter is actually part of the rotary hook. So this back area right here, this is what's called the selector. This front cutout right here is what actually does the thread cut. So now you can imagine that you've had a bird's nest. All kinds of thread is wrapped inside of this rotary hook and around these two areas, and I just pull it off without cutting any relief. I have a potential of disforming these two areas, either bending this tab up and out or down, or bending this tab. If I do that to this cutter on this rotary hook, I've now introduced the potential for mistrims and slingshots. So that's why it's so important that we take the time to clear these bird's nests correctly. And don't do like I did and leave your bobbin out when you're working in that area of the machine. Or don't forget to do your pinch rollers. Get your pinch rollers clipped back down if you're changing thread cone colors in a needle position, or if you're having to correct a thread break or something of that nature. I believe, isn't there a feed forward through the laser up? So laser up arrow, if you are having to rethread a needle, you can do laser up, and you can see on needle 11 that it feeds thread out. So maybe that's another use that you could do instead of lifting the pinch roller to get the thread out, you could feed yourself more thread that way.
So Rachel is asking, what's a slingshot? That doesn't sound like fun at all. And it's not. You'll watch it, and as it breaks, it will snap back up into the machine.
Yeah, so slingshot is after a trim, the thread will actually be out of the needle eye. It snaps the thread, and the thread comes all the way out of the needle eye. So that's what a slingshot is. A mistrim is where the machine has gone through the trim cycle, but the top thread is still in the garment. So if you took your finger after a trim and went like this, the thread would still be tied into the garment. So mistrims you've got to be pretty careful about also, because let's say we're sewing on needle 16, we get a mistrim, and our next color is on needle number 1. So the needle case has to move from the needle 16 position all the way over to the needle 1. Now you'll remember that earlier we talked about if the thread is captured correctly by the pinch roller, it does not pull out. So what it can do is that thread, as you're color changing across, it stretches, and then all of a sudden it snaps loose. Well, that could bend your needle number 16 because of all of the force. So you've got to keep an eye out on that. But all of that we just discussed could be contributed to these two items here getting disformed because of a bird's nest that was not cleared correctly. So to clear a bird's nest on a cap is a lot more difficult than what it is on a flat garment. For a flat garment, in most instances, you can just look straight in and you're able to see what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and just put a flat on here real quick so that we can see.
I just want to make a couple comments. I think it's hilarious that Rachel has a different name for those that she can't actually repeat. And I would also argue that there are some flat goods that are just as much a bear, if not more, than a cap. Doing it at the bottom of a tote bag where you're sealed from getting into it, or pillowcases, or I've done a few things, and yeah. And for me, now I'm completely notorious for doing what you do, and I leave the bobbin case out. Those don't seem to be as bad for me as the ones where the pinch roller is up or it walks to the side.
I would agree with that.
You agree with me on that one? Okay.
Just because the machine detects, it seems to detect it quicker and stop, so that you're not feeding as much thread down into the system as with a leaving the pinch roller up or not having the thread under the pinch roller scenario. But yeah, slingshots are not fun. They're the...
have enough static in the room that it slingshots and then thread sticking straight out from the front of the machine.
Okay, so we have made our switch from cap to flat. Do a little sales promo here. If I would have left this underneath the black arm, you can see the exchange from caps to flats is pretty fast, pretty easy to do. So I just hooped up a little 15 round is all. And so if I do get the bird's nest on here, now like Nate said, there are other garments that would make it much more difficult. But I can come in right here, and this gives us a good idea of what in between the garment and the needle plate. we want to come right in this area right here. And this is where we want to make our cut to make sure that we've got that thread relieved. Then we also want to make sure that once we've got that, we can remove our garment. And then we can make sure that the area under the needle plate to the top of the rotary hook is cleaned out as well. Once you've got all of that cleaned out, if you still see thread inside that rotary hook area, you can take the needle plate off and do an additional cleaning there. If it looks like you've got everything out of there, you don't see any thread in there, I don't even believe you'd have to take the needle plate off. You can just clear it that way. So again, it seems like something that's pretty self-explanatory, but with the S95, with this rotary hook that has the cutter incorporated with the rotary hook, we can induce damage to the cutter and cause yourself more problems down the road. You could see that I use just a regular razor blade, but gosh, as long as you've got, these work pretty good, the curved scissors. I don't know if you can see, Nick, can we show those?
Yeah.
You can see how the blades are curved. Those work pretty good because you can come in like this and get the cut. Here's the razor blade. And then we've also got just some regular snips.
Would you throw that kit over there?
Yeah, and then we've also got that you can go to Madeira Mart, and they are running a special on this right now for 2 weeks, so I believe through August 13th, 14th. Native will I'll show them one more time the specifics. So you get a nice long, you can see a nice long razor blade to do the cuts. You get a nice pair of tweezers. We also discussed this hook already. So pretty cool kit that you're able to do for clearing the bird's nest. You also get an extra razor blade for the cutter. So again, you can go to Madeira Mart. Just put that in your search. Or Scott put a link up there as well.
The sale is good till
I think 13th or 14th of August.
2019, because this could stay up online for a while.
Yeah, 2019.
Sorry to interrupt, but there is another question. I may be putting you on the spot.
That's fine.
That's what I'm going to do. If we get a slingshot, how do we stop them?
So you could have another couple contributing factors to a slingshot. The presser foot could be too high.
Yeah.
Which allows flagging of the garment during a trim. That can cause a slingshot.
That's where I was headed.
Yeah,
Scott's not mic'd up, but Scott just
design
said
digitation.
Yeah.
Or digitization would be with a double locks or weird locks.
Yeah, Scott just said bad locks, and this is where he and I will go into, if you add tie stitches to one that already has tie stitches and you double them up, it can cause your trims to fail or be really funny. That would be one of the symptoms. Or
in the same hole.
Yep, tiny. Yeah, I wish.
This is kind of.
I apologize. I broke one of the mics, and so Scott's not mic'd up. But what he said was, if your tie stitches are really, really tiny, so that they're going into the same hole, kind of anything that's going to affect where that loop is and how the thread is placed when that trim occurs, can cause kind of some of those errors. So it's basically the stuff we talk about all the time.
Yeah.
Make sure your presser foot's in the right spot, your digitizing's
if it's
right.
design specific, of course, then you're going to want to look at the design itself and what Nate and Scott just discussed. If it is not design specific, then you kind of got to look more towards what's going on with the embroidery machine itself. And you're going to want to look at, like we discussed, your presser foot height, your retaining finger gap, your bobbin tension. Bobbin tension can have a lot to do with the slingshot as well. Possibly needle case calibration. You should have sew quality issues as well with that. So If you're on the S95, which again is EMT 16, 16 plus, Melco Bravo, you're going to be looking at replacing this cutter itself on the rotary hook. Shop Melco 34666-01 is the kit part number. The kit comes with a cutter, 2 screws, a screwdriver, and a little tube of Loctite. So, one thing is once these cutters do get damaged, there's really not a fix for them. You can't bend them back because you don't get them back to the right position and things of that nature. So, all right, so that is bird's nesting. Pretty short and sweet one, but it's pretty important, again, to make sure that we clear those correctly, because if we don't, it can cause you bigger headaches. And who is it, Rachel, that has the great name for slingshots? If we can't say it, that tells you how much of a pain they are. So if you can avoid them, that's great. So thank you everybody for watching. If you've got any questions, go ahead and post them and we'll get to them. Also, Melco's got a really great service website, www.melco-service.com. Technical manuals, there's an FAQ, there's videos, there's all kinds of really good stuff on there. So utilize that also. Thank you and have a good day.